Welcome to another episode of the Solo Scaled podcast. And today I want to talk about this one concept that if you're tired of spinning your wheels trying to grow your podcast and wondering when the money will actually come in, this episode will change the game. Andy Lehman's system has helped him turn podcasts into profit machines. And today he's sharing his secrets. Andy, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, Ken, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, Andy, I want everybody to know you are the founder of Lehman Creations, and you're the host of two podcasts. It's Dudes and Dads and Podcast Answers, right? That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Okay, so before we even jump into the conversation, I got to ask, there's so many brand builders out there and people who are like, you should have one niche, just focus on one thing. You got two going on here. Um, I know we're going to talk about profiting and all that, but I'm just curious from you, man, how does that play out in your branding, having two podcasts?
So for me, my actual business production. So like I Lehman Creations and Podcast Answers are one and the same, and and I help people start and grow their podcasts as well as doing other production type things, whether that be conferences, in person, live, remote producing, and so that for me is my business, but. Dudes and dads, that's a whole hobby thing. That started that actually before podcast answers. I'd been podcasting a long time and decided to start that one. And then after that, started podcast answers. So yeah, it's two separate things.
I love it, man. It's funny. I'm in a similar boat where I have Solo Scaled as my business, but like as my passion project, I have a similar podcast, but it's called Shameless Podcast. So it's all about helping men recover from addiction and stuff like that. So it was just interesting. I was like, oh, we're both doing the same thing. I love it.
Yeah.
Andy, today we're going to talk about pulling back the curtain and see how it's done. Because a lot of people talk about, hey, go create a podcast and it's awesome. Like you're going to generate money. And then people start doing it. And then they realize, like, how do I grow this thing? It's not like
Mhm.
social media where people can just, the algorithm just shows it up, right? It doesn't show up a lot on SEO. So I want to start with, like, what's the number one mistake you see podcasters making when they are trying to actually grow their audience?
So for me, I see it happening too fast. People take more than they can chew, more than they can handle. They try to be everywhere. They try to do video and audio and social media and just try to do everything so fast. Podcasting it is a slow game. And I think a lot of people come into it expecting right away that there'll be money, and that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah. So you're saying, yeah, like, some people may use it as like the ads game, right? Where it's like, oh,
Mhm.
pay to play, and all of a sudden I'm gonna start growing within 30 days, and you're like, no, no, this may take like a year to actually grow,
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
right?
Because yeah, I mean, especially when we're coming to like monetizing your podcast as far as with ads. If you're using ads, that's something that for the most part is going to take you have to have your audience there first. And so yeah, definitely you're going to have to start small.
Yeah. So give some people a good frame of reference. If they were like starting a podcast from scratch, right? What would like, and you talk about you're helping people start a podcast and helping
Mhm.
them grow it. What are some good expectations for them to have when growing a podcast? Is it like, hey, it's going to take 6 months for you to maybe hit 100 views, and then a year from now you start monetizing? What does that look like?
Yeah, so usually what I tell people is yeah, you're going to don't be disappointed by your numbers. In fact, I would tell them to not even look at your numbers for the first maybe month and a half, maybe 2 months, because what's going to happen is people are going to look at that and they're going to say, "Man, I only have 10 people listening to my show." When in
Mm,
reality, or even 100 people listening to my show. But what I like to tell people is, imagine having those 100 people standing in front of you and you're telling them your message. That's 100 people that you're telling your message to. That's a pretty amazing thing. I think people come into it with that expectation of, I'm going to be nationally broadcasted. I'm going to be the next Joe Rogan. And I don't think that's a good thing to go into. So definitely don't check your numbers right away because you're going to be disappointed.
yeah. I remember when I first launched my ever first podcast, I was like, oh my gosh, this thing is going to hit hundreds and thousands. You have that vision. And
Mhm.
then I literally remember looking at it and there was like seven people who downloaded the first one. And I was like, deep down inside, I was a little heartbroken, man. I'm like, I posted it on social media. I posted everywhere. I have thousands of people who follow me. I'm like, seven people? That's it? I was like, my ego for sure went out the window a little bit, but I started to realize, I'm like, kind of what you were saying, man, if I was able to talk to 7 people about my story or whatever the thing is,
Mhm.
that's a big deal every week.
And I think people have to realize too. And now there's been more. I started back in 2007 when, I mean,
Yeah.
podcasting was relatively new at that point, right? I mean, there was, it is a couple years old, but there was not a lot of information out there at the time. We were doing things the hard way. We had to, essentially figure this thing out. And I think there's been a lot of people who are now in the podcast helping space, where they're
Yeah.
consulting and doing things like that. But even so, your first couple episodes are going to be terrible. They are. I mean, I think back to it. I mean, you're not a normal. Most people aren't naturally good at speaking on mic or on camera, and that's a skill that you have to learn, and that takes a little while.
Yeah. And even for people who are good public speakers, right? Like they
Hmm.
might be great on stage, but when they get in front of a camera, they freeze. They start doing like, my favorite part is a lot of them become monotone.
Yes.
And you're just like, dude, it's okay. You got to actually be expressive. People are listening to it or they're watching it nowadays, right? Like all of it has to kind of come out. So I get it, man. It's one of those challenges that most people have.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons that I've started recording my stuff live, because it go live to YouTube, live to Facebook when I'm recording. And part of that reason is because then I know that there may be people listening, right? Whereas if I
Mm,
just sit down and hit the record on my recorder, I'm going to mess up. I'm going to say something that I don't want, and then I'm going to start over again. And it's going to take twice as long to actually make the show, because if I just go straight live, I have that expectation of, oh, somebody may be listening or somebody is listening. And so I have to, I don't want to say be perfect, but there's that expectation of, no, I can't start over.
yeah. So walk us through a little bit of your system.
Yeah.
How do you do it, especially if you're helping people and they want to start growing their podcast? We talked about it just being like have the right expectation,
Mhm.
right? But like once they set that expectation, how can you go from 7 views to 100 views to,
Sure. Yeah. So I would say build a community, right? Communities are huge. So I'm a big fan of whether that's Facebook or Discord or wherever you feel comfortable growing your audience. Grow an audience. I would say start with a singular place. I mean, yes, you can do Discord and you can do Facebook groups and things like that. I would start with a singular place. And the reason for that is just because you want your audience to be all in one place. But the nice thing about the audience is then they feel connected to other people that are listening, right? If you can
mm,
get them into your community, Facebook, Discord, whatever, they're gonna know that, oh, there's more than just myself listening. And again, now at the beginning of a show, it might feel pretty lonely in there when you first start your episode or your podcast, because there may only be one and maybe your grandma or your mom in there, right? But starting that community is something that I think is helpful, because I've seen it happen when you call your audience something special, like your listeners, you name them something, and you address them like that. Those people who are in the club, they feel special, and they're more likely to go out and tell people about your show, because they're more than just listening to it on their drive to work. They're engaged. So that's what I'd say first, and then I'd also say engage your audience too. So like if someone leaves a comment, reply to it. If that's on Facebook or in your group or email, reply to it. Not only reply to it to them so they can hear your answer, but also talk about it on your show. People love
y-
hearing their comments on your show. It's the same thing that I've seen with things when you're live streaming. If you're using a tool like Ecamm, like I do for my live stream, I have the ability to bring my comments right up on screen. And as soon as I start doing that, people engage more. They're going to comment more. They're going to talk more. They're going to chat more because they see their content on screen. They hear their comment on the show. And so I would say give value to your audience, and they're going to tell other people about it.
yeah. As you are growing that community, I want to take a step back. One of the things you said earlier was that you don't want to be everywhere. What would
Mhm.
you recommend for people when they're starting the podcast? Would you say something like, one of the things I say all the time is like, have one long form and one short form channel. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so I would say the same thing. Now, I would say as far as your podcast goes, be everywhere, right? I mean, if you have the opportunity to put it on Spotify and Apple Podcast and wherever, do that. That's not going to take a whole lot more effort on your part, right? you're uploading it to your podcast host, and then it gets distributed to all the directories. So that's not going to take a lot of extra part on your part, because so you won't burn out. But I would say, yeah, have maybe at the start like one social channel. So whether that's Facebook because you're growing your community there, then do that. If it's something like Instagram where you can do something more shorts and reels and type of thing, then do that. But somewhere that you can engage your people. And I like Instagram too. I mean, not that Facebook can't do lives, because Facebook can do lives, but I like the ability to on Instagram to kind of go live, and you can even bring somebody up pretty easily on Instagram. Now you can do it on Facebook too, but I think Instagram is probably better. There's
Yeah, yeah,
more of a following there that you can go live, and you can even interact with your audience if you want to. That's a great thing. You can just bring one of your guests on, and or one of your followers on, and talk, have something that, yeah, they're gonna share their people. And the great thing about Instagram is the fact that if you go live on Instagram, then their people that are following them also get notified that they're going live. So you're going to actually have twice as much audience when you do that.
that's awesome. So if I hear you correctly, part of your system is like, hey, pick one long form channel. We're talking about podcasting, the short form, let's say Instagram, right? And you would say, hey, let's go live, because if you go live on Instagram, the person that you bring up, then their group is going to see that they went live too. And that's how you start to get that channel.
Right, because then, and this is great and super helpful. Like what I would recommend doing is, let's say you're going to have a guest on. So, for instance, if you were on my show, I would say, "Hey, Ken, do you mind? This is going to release on Tuesday, right? Let's say maybe Friday after people have had a chance to listen. Can you get on with me for about 10 or so minutes just to kind of recap what we covered on Instagram Live?" And so that's a great thing, because people have had a chance to listen to a little bit. So they may be able
Yeah.
to bring up some of their questions and their comments, but then also it exposes me to your audience, because your audience is notified that you're going live with podcast answers or whatever the show is. And
Yeah.
so it exposes to more people.
I love it. Is that same thing possible with like LinkedIn and with, I know Facebook, I think might do that, but it sounds like Instagram is the one that does more of that live distribution.
Right. I like Instagram better as far as that goes, for the quick lives to bring on. Again, I think you can do it on Facebook. Honestly, when I go live on Facebook, I'm using Ecamm, so I'm not doing it with a traditional Facebook, just doing it off my phone. And so
Yeah.
that's where, yeah, you're not going to get that same interaction there.
So with Instagram, you're not even using Ecamm. You're just straight
No,
getting on your phone, more organic.
if I'm going to do something like an Ask Me Anything, then I'll do it on Ecamm. But if I'm going to bring somebody else onto my stream, I'm going to do it just on the app on my phone. It's a little bit more raw. It's real, and
Yeah.
I've even done it when I was recapping an episode and I was in my car, and I just parked it and did a live from there. It was real. It was raw. People like. I mean, don't get me wrong. People like polished shows and polished things, but there is something about that being raw and being real that attracts people to it, because then they know that you're a real human too.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And that seems like part of your system, right? Of like, how do you keep growing? How do you keep the audience engaged? The first thing I heard was build a community.
Mhm.
The second one is actually like engaging them in a more authentic, real way. It might be in the car sometimes. It might
Yeah,
be on Ecamm, whatever it is. Do those things. When you do those lives, at what point do you push people to the community? Like if you were building a marketing funnel, are
sure.
you like just doing it from the podcast recording, or are you doing it just on the Instagram comments? Like, just curious, when does that, when
Yeah.
do you
So,
push to the community?
I would do a couple different things. Probably for my actual podcast episode, I would my call to action on that would probably be something like, share, tell others about the show. If you've gotten any value about how to tell other people about the show, and try to help grow your audience like that, to help them, you know, nudge them in the direction to say yes, and share your show. On Instagram, I think I would bring them into the community. I would say things like, "Hey, if you want more content like this, recapping our shows, come here, come to our community, and even do some things that are strictly for your community." So if you are doing it in Facebook, maybe do a behind the scenes type of a show, in or not a show. I don't want to say show, but uh,
Yeah.
a live stream or something that you can put just in that community. And again, it's not, when you're in that community, you do need to engage your people, not just have a community for others to talk, but ask questions in there. So if I have an episode that I'm, let's say, for dudes and dads, if I'm talking to somebody who, maybe found out that they were adopted when they were young and never knew their dad, but found out later who their dad was, I'm going to maybe ask questions about that episode in the community also. So I get people going and engaging, because you can't just expect people to come in there and chat. I know
Yeah.
I'm in a lot of communities on Facebook, and the larger ones, yeah, there's a lot of people chatting back and forth, but especially when you're small, you have to engage the people too. They're not just going to come in and chat.
Yeah. I was talking to someone who's going to be on the Solo Skilled podcast, and her name is Megan, and she says, hey, the thing she does with her community, and she has a pretty large community now, but she's like, hey, as soon as they enter the community, she's in the DMs actually talking to them. And she actually told me, like, hey, she takes 2 hours a day of her working day of like just engaging people, like interacting with them. And she's like, I do most of my sales from the DMs.
Yeah,
Like,
I've done that occasionally. It's not something that I've done in a little while, but when I've had people that start liking, are commenting on things on Instagram, I'll shoot them a DM, and even I'll do it with a voice memo. Personally, I like voice. I mean, I'm a
mm.
podcaster, so
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I like voice, but I'll just do a
And you
quick
got a great
voice
voice,
chat.
by the way.
Thank you. So I'll just do a quick voice chat, on. I mean, anything really does it. Facebook Messenger, Instagram, you can do these voice message, but I'll say like, "Hey, thanks for following our show. Just out of curiosity, how did you hear about us?" And a lot of times, it's that first email back. I know it doesn't happen as much anymore because it's kind of expected, but a lot of times that what I've seen work for email marketing for people is when they ask you a specific question on that very first email. Like once you've subscribed, they'll say
Yeah,
something like, "Hey, tell me a little bit about yourself," or whatever, to kind of get you engaging. And I find that if you do that on Instagram, you create what I'm going to call like a true fan, right? Somebody who's going to be have that connection with you that says, "I know Andy. I've had this voice conversation with him. He's not just a podcaster that I'm listening to, but he's somebody that I have a relationship with."
yeah. It's fascinating, that true fan kind of analogy, because most people, if you just send them like a random DM, right? They're like, okay, yeah, I think I talked to them, but am I talking to them, or was that just a mini
Right.
chat automation? But as soon as you send a voice audio note, you're like, oh wow, this person wants to actually engage me.
Hmm.
They want to be my friend. Like it's just this interesting psychological thing that happens. It's happened to me, man. I remember some people have reached out to me, and like they're more known, and they send me an audio. I'm like, hey man, tell me how business is going. And I'm like, wow, they really want to know.
Uh huh.
Deep down, I realized I'm probably getting sucked into their marketing funnel, but still, I was
Right.
like, hey, we're having a conversation. This is awesome.
Yeah.
So for you, Andy, as you think about people, and I know we've already kind of started talking about this, but like as they start growing, right, a lot of it is the engagement piece, right? It's getting them into the community. It's really you being present, is what I hear, right? I think a lot of people want to have a shortcut where it's just like, hey, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to open a community and hope, see what happens. That's not a good
Right.
strategy. You're actually engaged. You're actually active. At what point have you noticed that people can actually start making profit, or generating leads from their podcast?
Sure. So what I would say, and I know a lot of advertising is going to require you to have lots of listeners, right? The
Yeah.
thousands. Even then, your or your price per thousands is going to be pretty low, right? If you're expecting to make it big. So what I would say, as far as if you're looking for revenue from your show, I, I've heard it said once, and I'm going to attribute it to Adam Curry, who is an old MTV VJ, person who helped start podcasting. And his big thing is value for value. And what that is essentially is an ask. And it's, hey, if you've gotten any value out of this show, I ask that you return it back. And that doesn't have to be money. That's time, talent, or treasure. And you start doing that, and you don't you don't just offer that, let's say, to somebody through a buy me a coffee or whatever, because you'll get something like, if you set a limit like $2, $5, or $10, you're going to get $2, $5, or $10. But if you start providing a lot of value, and this is where it comes back to even in your community, because if you're providing value lots of places, your podcast, your community, things like that, and you make that ask that says, hey, if you've gotten value for this from this show, hey, consider giving it back. You'll find that people are willing to open up their pocketbooks for you. If you don't pigeonhole them into a five or $10 donation, you may get two, $5 or $10 donations, but you may also get $1,000 donation. And because people, you don't really realize, especially if you're building that community and you're making people feel special, they're going to want to give you value back. And so I would say start with that. And you can also create something to sell or coaching, one-on-one consulting. You can do that right away. It's one of my, I mean, that's really honestly, Ken, one of the reasons that I started Podcast Answers, because I wanted to pitch myself to people to do podcast editing. But I also knew that like I can't just go throw my name out there because no one's going to know who I am. And so if I give them something like my podcast, and I also know that not everybody is going to be able to afford the price that I'm charging for consulting or at podcast editing. And so I'm willing to give back to my community by creating this free podcast. And so I'm answering questions that people have and that I think other people might have that I can point people back to. So let's say someone comes to me and says, hey, I want to move podcast hosts. How do I do that? I can send them an episode and I don't have to go through the time of actually re-explaining that. I can just say, hey, I already created this episode. Here it is. And so you can start making money like that by just creating something that is of value to people. Because once they get to know you, you can, I mean, honestly, if you have a podcast, your not best, easiest advertiser is yourself for products that you have. So because it's not going to cost you anything. You already have this audience. You can put it out there and pitch it to your audience. Now again, don't be too salesy. I mean, people will see through you and go, "Oh, he's just trying to sell something." So don't do that. But for me, my call to action at the end of Podcast Answers is usually, "Hey, if you have a podcasting question, for one, send me an email. I'll answer it. But if you don't want to go through all of this yourself, I'm available and you can hire me to do it." And so that's something that you can easily do and it doesn't come across as salesy. I lost your audio.
Oh, sorry about that. For those who are doing coaching and consulting, that's the huge game changer, right? Where like that simple call to action of like, number one, if you have a question, reach out to me,
Mhm.
right? And I love your specific question of like, if you have a podcasting question, reach out to me. I'm glad to answer your question. And I'm sure from there, you can start having the conversations, right? Where you're like, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? What's your game plan with this podcast? And see where it goes. It might not go anywhere, but at least it's going somewhere.
Right. Well, and another thing that's good for having this like offering that you offer to sell people your services and podcast is it helps grow your podcast also because you can be in Facebook communities and other communities or whatever. And the worst thing you can do is walk into that community and say, hey, I have a podcast. Come listen to my podcast. Everyone's going to turn you off and not listen to you right there. But if you come in and you're providing value that doesn't even necessarily apply to things that you're selling, but you're providing value to that community itself. Then when that question does come up, like, hey, how do you change podcast hosts and do that effectively? I can drop that in Facebook and say, hey, I answered this on one of my podcast episodes because that's less likely to trigger people as spam and your admins as spam. Now, again, some podcasts or some Facebook groups are gonna not like that no matter what.
Yeah.
But you're more if you've been providing value in this group and value in this group and value in this group, it's not going to come across as salesy and spammy if you just drop an episode you're linked to something that somebody has already asked about. And then once they've got that, they're listening to your podcast, hey, you've maybe gained another listener. But in the future, they may come to you and go, oh, that's right. Andy did say that he has consulting services that he can provide on how to do this or podcast editing or whatever. And so you're in their mind two different places because now they've become a fan of your show, but then also your call to action is in their head and at their fingertips when they actually need your services.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to even go back to the Facebook groups, I used to be a part of a coaching program, and I was a staff member there. And we use Facebook groups a lot. Like that was kind of the way we used to teach people. And one of the things that we always told people is like, if you are actually not commenting and engaging in that group, don't waste your time,
Hmm.
right? Because like you said, everybody's going to ignore you. And I actually found one thing that was super helpful is that I would really focus on the admins and see if they're posting and commenting,
Mm,
and I would start becoming friends with them, right? And
gotcha.
not like in a salesy way, but just like, hey, I want to become a friend with you. I want to partner with you because I want to provide value. So that when questions came up and I knew that it was like against the rules to post my content, if I've built a relationship long enough, I would go to those admins and I'd be like, hey, I know this is weird, but I saw this question. I do this. Are you cool with me posting this?
Hmm.
Right. And if they're like, oh, yeah, for sure, go for it. Like I've now just gotten an in. Right. And now I realize that I could build this whole relationship with people.
That's a great idea. I'm actually a moderator in the eCam community too, and
Yeah.
that will happen from time to time too, where we're saying, okay, like this person that's coming in as spam, or that person that actually is providing a lot of value. So let's leave that up, even though it may bend the rules a little bit.
Yeah. But it goes back to provide the value.
Hmm.
Right. I'm in other Facebook groups, man, where some people are like, right off the get go, they're like, hey, well, check out this podcast or watch this thing. And I'm like, dude, you're about to get blocked in like 2 seconds.
Yep.
Uh, the other thing that I've done too is that when people have questions, I'll be like, hey, man, I'll either answer it in the comments or I'll just be like, hey, I shot you a DM.
Hmm.
And I just send them the podcast recording that
Hmm.
way. That's another way. I know it's a longer play, but it's ways that you can start little by little growing your
Well,
podcast.
well, and again, it comes back to, especially if you've DM'd somebody, they have that conversation with you in their DMs, and they're going to go back to that. They're going to say, "Oh, that's right. Ken did send me this episode one time about XYZ. Like, maybe he has an answer for this," and you can come back and maybe that is a coaching or consulting type of thing that you service that you can offer them then.
Yeah. For you, Andy, as we wrap up here, what's like one mindset shift that helped you scale your podcast without burning out? Because I know a lot of people can be doing podcasting and they feel like they have to do it, 5 times a week, or like, crank out a podcast every other day. I
Mhm.
know one person who does it every single day, and I'm like, dude, you're gonna burn out, you know? But how do you do it? How do you scale? What's that mindset shift that you need to have?
Yeah, I would say set real expectations for yourself. So for and don't be afraid to even fail that. Like if you were to go look at podcast answers right now, my goal was originally to release an episode every week. I haven't released an episode in over a month because I've gotten busy with life. Now I've been providing value other places, and I've been able to still continue on that relationship building with my listeners, but as far as an episode goes, it's been a while since I put out an episode. But try to set good expectations for yourself. If you know that you can't release an episode every week, maybe come back to your listeners and say, "Hey, we're going to scale this back to just every other week," or I'm killing it. I'm going to do a great job. Let's move this up to twice a week. Now that's a lot of production work. Make sure you have time. But that and then and when I originally thought about this question that you asked me, I went back to the one true fan, right? You can, especially if you're just starting your show, like that one true fan is somebody that's going to evangelize for you. You make them feel special and they're going to evangelize. So again, I know I've hit that on the head several times, but they're going to evangelize for you. And you can even do things like make them a part of your team. If that means let them be a moderator on your Facebook group, then do that, because those type of people that you can trust and give a little bit more responsibility to are people that are going to be stick with it for the long time, and they're invested because not only do they feel special because they have that relationship with you, but they're invested now because they're a part of your team. And there may be things that you can even hand off. You may not be good at everything. Let somebody in your community do it for you. People may have better editing skills than you, maybe be able to create episode art for you. You may not be great at that. And so let other people that in your community that can do those skills, that want to give back. And that goes back to the value for value. It doesn't always have to be it doesn't always have to be monetary. It can be your time or your talent too. And so people may be really good artists, and you can I'm using this in quotes, employ them to create episode art because they want to do that to give back to you.
I'll give you a great example of this value for value thing in the mindset. I had a friend of mine who I used to do a lot of sales coaching, right? And he's having trouble. So I was like, hey, man, just send me your calls. I'll listen to them, right? And I gave him some feedback, and he was like, oh my gosh, that was phenomenal. And it increased his conversion rate
That's
exponentially.
awesome.
It was like he went from like 20% to like 60%. I can't remember the exact numbers, so don't quote me on it. But it was like he was like, "Oh my gosh, this is a game changer." So we stayed in touch, and then a few months after that, I actually had a new computer, a new laptop, and he's in the digital organization space. And I was like, he's a huge tech fan. I'm like, I need a good laptop to run all my eCam, all my tech stuff. I don't know what to do. So I just randomly reached out to him, and he's like, oh my gosh, let me help you. And I mean, he literally broke it down to the T, and he just kind of like held my hand.
That's
But it's
awesome.
just because I provided value for value on that. Like I helped
Right.
him on this thing, and he helped me back. And it was like, it was a great relationship that I still value today, because he just did that. He just provided value for value. And I love that you're ending with
Yeah.
that. Andy, for those people who are listening to this and they're like, I love this. I love that you're focused on podcasts and helping people grow. Where's the best place to reach you?
All right. So Podcast Answers is my website for all things podcast coaching. You can go there or email me hello@podcastanswers.com. I'm available for one-on-one chats. I'm available to teach you. I'm available to do the work for you. Or Lehman Creations is my other website where I do a lot of production stuff for conferences and other things like that.
I love it, man. Andy, thank you so much for providing some valuable, practical insights for our people. And for those of you who are listening to Andy, and if he inspired you, listen, don't just listen to this and walk away. Take one action step, whatever it is. Maybe go on Instagram Live, maybe just reach out to him and ask him for more follow up. Do whatever it takes. Start applying it today, right? Not next week, not next year, today, and watch what happens. And if you found this video valuable, hit subscribe and share it with a fellow podcaster ready to level up. Hope you have a great day.